Welcome to the Fast Five by Fear and Greed. I'm Michael Thompson and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Morning, Michael.
Today, in just 5 minutes, we're going to get an idea of what 2022 will look like, some of the trends that affect how we live and how we earn money. But Sean, if COVID has taught us anything, it's that it's very hard to make predictions.
So true, but a lot of these trends have already started, and this year we'll see a continuation of many of them. Demographer Mark McCrindle is the principal of McCrindle and an advisor to boards and committees across Australia. Mark, let's start with where we live. There's been a trend away from cities towards regional areas and lifestyle locations. Do you think that will continue this year?
It will, Sean, and that's because the trends driving the move to the regions are here to stay. Trends like chasing affordability. Houses in our capitals are far higher than they are in the regions. And even though we've seen prices in regional Australia go up, there's still a lot less than the capitals. And also people are chasing livability, lifestyle, and that's what the regions offer. And particularly now in a work from home environment, people can buy a lower priced place in a lifestyle area in the regions and keep their capital city job.
Okay, so what's it mean for house prices in the city, but then also in the regions?
We've seen the house prices go up all over the place, particularly in those regions because prices are driven by demand. But they have eased off, particularly in the units of our CBDs of our capital cities. And while we're seeing and will see growth over the long term, I think the rebalancing of our population will lead to different price variations. But yes, certainly there's good growth expected in the regionals for the medium term. And I think those units in the CBD will come on, particularly as our borders open, because that's where the overseas migration ends up in our capital city CBDs.
Okay, so our cities and regions potentially in 10 years will look really quite different to a couple of years ago.
They will. Our whole cities are really being reinvented. We're not in the CBDs as much for work. And I think in the long term, that's a trend that'll stay. We'll come back, but not as much. But we'll see more residences in the CBD. We'll see CBDs become destinations for retail and events and hospitality and cultural precincts. So they'll actually be more vibrant into the future, even if they're not just central business districts.
Okay, so what about the office? Is it dead? It's probably not dead, but has it peaked? Maybe that's a better question.
Yeah, well, it's actually got a very bright future, and that's because even though we can work from home and the future will be hybrid, we will do some work from home, we still need to gather. And organizations are recognizing that they need to come together for the social connection, for the values, for the culture, for the alignment, and for the collaborative tasks. And that's the future of work, is being able to innovate and adapt together. And that happens better in the room than it does online. So the office still has a big future, but we might only be going in 3 days or 4 days a week instead of the usual 5. And so to that extent, we've moved to this hybrid working arrangement.
I'm just interested in the whole concept of the Great Resignation, which came out of the US. We talk about it in Australia, though. The Reserve Bank will say, well, no, because of JobKeeper, we were sort of more tied to our workplaces than other economies. Do you think there is a Great Resignation in Australia, firstly, and whether there is or isn't, what's that mean for our relationship with work?
Yeah, I think we will see increasing churn across roles because we've got the demand for work greater than the supply. We've got an aging workforce, more retirees. We haven't had the migration that we normally had over the last few years. And most migration into Australia is from a skilled visa or student visa perspective. And so they haven't been able to take on those roles. So we've been plugging gaps locally and there just hasn't been the supply. And that means that it's employees' market. People are spoiled for choice. There are more jobs than people. And that's why if people are not satisfied with their role, or maybe they've reinvented themselves during the lockdowns, maybe they've done some further study, maybe they just have lost that social connection with colleagues after so long out of the office that they're ready for something else. And that's why we will probably over the next couple of months start to see an increase in resignations and people moving to what is the ideal role for them. And maybe they've moved location, so they're looking for an ideal job that actually suits where they now live as well.
So employers and businesses, they'll have to work hard to retain staff, but even rethink how they provide benefits and allow people to work.
That's exactly right. We need to think not just about making sure there are no push factors that cause people to leave our employment, toxic culture or bad leadership or just some blow up in the organization, but actually consistent pull factors to keep people engaged. Just because they're working there now doesn't mean they'll stay there. And so it's about the right culture, leadership, engagement, looking after our teams. And that is a fantastic thing because it provides a bit more balance of power to the employees. It keeps the employers honest to make sure they're really growing their teams and adding value to them. And that creates a more engaged and satisfied workforce, which leads to better productivity and better outcomes.
Mark, thank you for talking to Fast Five by Fear and Greed.
Thanks so much, Sean.
That was demographer Mark McCrindle. Now, Michael, I have renewed enthusiasm about 2022 after that discussion.
Yeah, so we've got cities are changing, the office is changing, the Great Resignation is underway. There is a lot happening.
The Fear and Greed management's changing.
Sorry, I wasn't aware of that one. All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
That's it for today. Make sure you've hit follow on the podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast Five by Fear and Greed.